Welcome to Embrace the Dark and the Light, a podcast about healing, identity, purpose, and being human. I'm your host, Kelly Street, a therapist, writer, and lifelong seeker. I believe that healing isn't linear. Darkness isn't something to fear, and the journey inward is the most important one we'll ever take. Each episode, I explore the full spectrum of what it means to live a conscious, intentional life, from the messy and tender to the sacred and expansive, through a mix of solo episodes and honest conversations with fellow creators, healers, and thinkers. We'll walk together through the shadow and the light, trusting that both have wisdom to offer. You're not alone in this. Welcome to Embrace the Dark and the Light. Close your eyes if you're able, or soften your gaze. Begin by noticing your breath. Not forcing it, just letting it move as it already does. Bring your attention to your body, where it meets the chair, the floor, or the space around you. Notice what it feels like to be supported. Anxiety often pulls us into the future, into the what ifs. So right now, in this moment, invite yourself back to just this moment, to feeling your breath moving in and moving out. If anxiety is present, don't try to push it away. Instead, imagine it as a messenger standing just outside the door. You don't need to invite it in, but you can acknowledge its presence. Beneath that anxious energy may live something deeper. There might be fear or love or joy. Take a deep breath and imagine yourself gently touching into that deeper layer, without needing to define it. As we move into today's conversation, carry with you the reminder that anxiety is not your enemy. It's a signal. It's a teacher. Anxiety is an invitation. And now return to the moment and welcome to the Embrace the Dark and the Light podcast. So I have to begin by saying it's been a while. It's been a while since I both announced the change of the podcast name, but also since I have regularly done episodes. And there's a pretty big reason why there has been such a break. And that is because I am pregnant. I'm, as of this episode coming out, 26 weeks pregnant. And that has taken up a lot of space and time and energy in my life. And that's kind of why I'm actually doing this podcast today. The theme of anxiety is in part to do with the pregnancy, because it has not necessarily been an easy or super happy, joyful. There's been a lot of joy. There's been a lot of happiness. But with that, there's been a lot of anxiety along the way as well. So that is why we are talking about anxiety today. Is in part, it is something that has been big and heavy and present on my mind and in my experience over the last 5 months. And so I thought, what better way to navigate it than to come and talk about it? Because that is one of the things I will start by saying about anxiety. That is definitely one of the things that I have noticed both in my clients, but also in my own personal journey, is that when anxiety is kept in the dark, just like pretty much everything else, when we keep things in the shadow and in the dark, they feel so much bigger. It's like having the monster under your bed, or believing that there is a monster under your bed. When you turn on the light or when you look, there's nothing there. And anxiety is that same way. When you look, when you actually ask, when you connect with it, there may be nothing there. It might just be all in your imagination. So for me, in the last 5 months, how anxiety has come up is that with having had such a long IVF journey, I frankly didn't really know whether I would actually ever get pregnant or not. And so the moment it was confirmed, or we found out, we got our blood test back results, a part of me went into panic mode and was like, this can't be real. This can't be happening. It's not going to happen. It's never going to work out. It couldn't possibly work out. And through some medical scares and some actual concerns that came up that have now, thank goodness, been alleviated or not turned out to be real scares, kind of like the monster under the bed, that anxiety has somewhat lessened, but really not completely. It's really continued to be there. And I do hear that that is a common experience. Pregnancy anxiety is kind of a thing because there's so little control in pregnancy and these things that are happening to you. So I think there's a part of that's why the anxiety is so strong. And then on top of that, layered for me is the experience of IVF and having so much uncertainty in that. So that is why we're talking about anxiety today. I have really noticed over the last couple of months as well for my clients that in my therapy practice that anxiety has shown up so strong for them as well. I don't know what it was about the summer, what it was about astrologically things happening, not totally sure, but all I know is anxiety was big in July and August for the people that I work with. So it seems apt to talk about here. So let's start with defining kind of what is anxiety and what happens in our brain and in our body during anxiety. So anxiety is more than worry. It's really a combination of both physiologically what is happening in the body and psychologically what is happening in the brain. This is where we go into fight or flight. So here's what happens in your brain and body during anxiety. Step 1, we have the alarm system of our brain. This is the amygdala. So anxiety starts in our brain's threat detection center. This is called the amygdala. This is located in the back of your brain, and this is kind of what they call the lizard brain, or what we think of when we think of, cavemen or people running from a lion. What it's doing is the amygdala is kind of constantly scanning for danger. It's looking all around us, trying to find even subtle cues. This used to be the crackle of leaves or a little bit of a noise. Now we hear this alarm system as a tone of voice, or it could be a thought that pops up, or even a memory. PTSD, a memory that comes in, and we perceive that memory, that thing happening, as happening in real time. And so when our amygdala senses a threat, it hits the panic button. Even if there isn't real danger there, the brain, the amygdala goes, beep, 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 we've got to pay attention to something. Okay, step 2, the stress hormone cascade. The amygdala then signals the hypothalamus in the brain, which flips on the sympathetic nervous system. This is what tips us into fight, flight, or freeze. Adrenal glands start to release adrenaline to have us be able to respond really quickly if we actually need to run or to fight. And then we also get cortisol that dumps in. So our longer lasting stress hormone. And so we've got this kind of hormonal cocktail happening in our body that is really preparing us for survival, that is preparing us to be able to run from the tiger, whatever danger it is. So like when you were a little kid and it wasn't necessarily that you were running from a lion or maybe from a rabid dog, but it was that you would walk into the room and you would sense that mom or dad was angry. They were pissed off and you didn't know what to do. And so all of a sudden, your amygdala senses there's a tone of voice that is dangerous here. I don't know what could happen. Or there's an energy in the air that feels scary. So your amygdala goes boop, flips on this sympathetic nervous system reaction. You get a drop of adrenaline, a drop of cortisol, and you are ready to fight, to run out of there, or to freeze. So then what happens next is the body is responding to that drop in hormones. Your heart rate's going to increase. This way you can get more blood to your muscles so you're ready to run or to fight. Your breathing gets faster so that you can get more oxygen into the body. Your muscles are tensing, preparing you to be able to jump into action. Digestion is slowing down. The body is saving energy for survival, not for food processing. And you may start to sweat. This will help cool your body down in preparation in case you have to or are exerting energy. Next, the thinking brain goes offline. So when we get into this fight, flight, or freeze mode, The blood is moving away from the front of our brain, that prefrontal cortex, the rational planning part of our brain that gets developed by the time we're like 24, 25. And the blood is shifting away from there, going to the back of the brain and into other areas of the body. And so that's why in moments of anxiety, it feels hard to focus, can't really remember details, can't really think logically. The survival brain has taken the wheel. So this is why when your anxiety is increasing, it seems like that wheel of those dark or scary thoughts just keeps spinning because you are out of the prefrontal cortex. You're out of that logical thinking part of the brain, and you're just in the fear response. And so all you can think about is the fear, the fear, the fear, or the anxiety, like whatever that is pumping the anxiety. Surviving, really. That's all you can think about is, how am I going to survive this situation? How am I going to get myself out of here? So your brain is noticing all of these changes in your body. It's noticing the pounding heart, the tight chest, the shallow breathing. And then the body goes, we're really in danger here. Like, this is really bad. The body needs to get out of here. And so that is kind of what creates that anxiety spiral. We go from, I feel anxious, to my body reacts, to my brain sees the reaction happening in my body, to I feel more anxious. The good thing is, the lucky thing is, we are able to go into recovery. So from that feedback loop, we can go into a parasympathetic nervous system response. So once our brain recognizes the thought, I am safe, the parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest system, will reactivate. Your heart rate's going to slow down, your digestion will restart, your muscles will release the tension they're holding. And so this is where grounding practices like breath, like movement, like touch, like meditation will all help, because they will all be signals of safety to get back into your body, which then signals safety to the brain. And the brain will stop dumping those hormones and will actually start dumping some different chemicals and hormones that will help your body and your brain naturally calm down. So here's a metaphor for anxiety. Anxiety is kind of like a smoke alarm in your kitchen. Definitely, it is life-saving. It alerts you to real danger. But other times, it's just going off because you burned the toast or because you were cooking bacon. I don't know about you, but sometimes every time I cook bacon, it feels like my fire alarm goes off. The alarm feels the same, but the actual danger is different. The work with anxiety is learning how to tell the difference and how to calm the alarm or shut the alarm off when you know you're safe. My take on anxiety is that really it is a signal that points us to an emotion beneath the surface. Anxiety points us to fear, grief, helplessness, feeling vulnerable, joy, kind of those. So anxiety points us to those variety of those like 7 base emotions that we have. And what I do with people and with myself, when I can remember to, when I move out of my prefrontal or when I move back into my prefrontal cortex, I should say, what I have people do is I have people ask themselves, if I wasn't feeling anxious right now, what would I be feeling? If I wasn't in anxiety right now, what would this be? And usually I'll hear fear, sadness, grief. Like I'll get one of those words, or I'll get a signal to one of those words. And then from there, I can actually address what that emotion underneath the anxiety is. So now that you know what anxiety is and kind of how it works in your body and in your brain, I thought I would share some different schools of thought on how, from psychology, on how we deal with anxiety, how we really can work with it. And maybe you'll find a method that works for you. Maybe you'll find a method that aligns differently than how you've been working with your anxiety. So I just thought it would be fun to share these things. Okay, first school of thought on anxiety comes from Jungian or depth psychology. So Jungian psychology from Carl Jung believes that anxiety is a messenger from the unconscious. Anxiety shows up as an urging to have us face shadow material. Anxiety is symbolic. Anxiety can signal that we're living out of alignment with our deeper self. And anxiety is part of individuation. So in Jungian psychology, the discomfort that comes with anxiety, that like out of my skin feeling or terror feeling, that discomfort is the threshold to growth. This differs from some other thoughts about psychology, like cognitive behavioral therapy. So, cognitive behavioral therapy views anxiety as a distorted thinking pattern. So, they'll call this catastrophizing or fortune telling. And cognitive behavioral therapy focuses on thought replacement and exposure. And so, basically, you are exchanging one thought for another of like, for me, like with pregnancy, it's like something can go wrong and replacing that with nothing is going wrong. Nothing is wrong. There you go. And the goal of CBT therapy with anxiety is to really reduce the power of the anxious thoughts by testing their reality, by making them either small or by saying, this isn't real. Another school of thought with anxiety is psychodynamic or psychoanalytic therapy. And these therapies use anxiety as a signal of your inner conflict. So, sort of similar to the Jungian therapy, it's kind of like, competing desires and that showing up where there's misalignment. They also view anxiety as often being attached to or often connected to childhood attachment or fear of loss or fear of judgment. And so psychodynamic or psychoanalytic therapy will manage anxieties by trying to uncover the root conflicts within us and integrating them. So making it so there is no longer internal conflict and that's smoothed out because now we know where those attachments or fears come from. Somatic or body-based therapy, which I love to use, views anxiety as trapped nervous system energy, the fight, flight, or freeze that gets stuck in our body. Basically, when were we not able to get ourselves out of a dangerous or fearful situation? And how can we complete that action in our body as a way to signal that we can actually take action and we can be okay? So tools that they use in somatic therapy are grounding, movement, breath, and co-regulation. So this shows up in my practice with clients where I will kind of show them how to be calm or teach them how to move through the anxiety. And somatic or body-based therapy believe that this is your nervous system's way of showing you that it doesn't feel safe. And so you have to do things to create that safety, obviously. Makes sense, right? Two other schools of thought. Second to last one is existential or humanistic therapy. And they treat anxiety as just kind of part of the human condition. Of course, it's going to happen. We live with uncertainty. We live with mortality. We have freedom. Freedom can be tied to anxiety, and we can live in isolation. So in existential therapy, the courage to be is one of the ideas. And so you have the courage to be, to live with the anxiety rather than eliminate it. So in my life right now, part of this, how this is showing up for me with this existential anxiety is that I'm going to continue to be pregnant, hopefully, for the next few months. And so I can't do anything about the circumstances that are contributing to the anxiety. I can just kind of choose to surrender to the unknown. I can choose to say, yes, this is happening. This anxiety is showing up. It is hard. I do not like how it feels. I can do some practices, but also I can just acknowledge that it's here. And it's probably going to be here as a passenger in various forms for the next months or years coming up. So there you go. Another school of thought on anxiety in the mental health space is mindfulness or acceptance-based therapy. Mindfulness will sometimes treat anxiety as teaching people to manage it as if it's a cloud passing through our consciousness. So our goal is not to banish the anxiety, but to change our relationship with it, to be able to observe it versus identify with it. Of like, it's not, I'm anxious or I have anxiety, is Anxiety is present right now. Anxiety is here. It takes it away. It pushes it out. It takes it a step further away from us so we can really see the anxiety instead of wearing it like a blanket or accepting it as a part of, or accepting it as who we are. And I also really like to incorporate that mindfulness acceptance based. That's a little bit of how in internal family systems therapy, they think about it as well. But in internal family systems therapy, they think about anxiety as it is a part of you that feels or holds anxiety. And that part of you can be healed. It can learn to release the anxiety. It doesn't have to necessarily carry it or have it be your identity, that it's just a part. It's not the whole of who you are is anxious. And I also like incorporating that model into the work that I do. So, all that said, anxiety is something that can not only be managed, but can be reduced or diminished. And it can also just be something that, like in the existential or some of the other, mindfulness practices, or even in Jungian therapy, that it's something that's going to come up again and again. I know that this anxiety is not necessarily, as I said, going to go away from me. I can do some things that I have been doing to try to reduce its impact or to be in the present moment. And some of those things that I have found helpful with my anxiety that's showing up is doing some body-based practices, really some finding out feeling where the anxiety is in my body and breathing into it, doing regular yoga and movement that helps me remind my body that it is not in fight or flight. I've also learned to just frankly accept that it's there. And along with that acceptance, once I get to that place, I can reframe the thoughts and I can remind my brain that some of those thoughts that are coming up are not real. Those are not things that are actually happening. And all of those things help me to be able to just be in the moment instead of catastrophizing or instead of being in the future and being in the unknown. They help me to be with what is. So I just want to remind you that hopefully something you've learned from this episode today, not just about how we experience anxiety or how different therapy models will deal with it or process it, but that you are not alone in it. I'm a therapist. I have been doing self-work for so long. I know how to deal with this. I know how to work with it or manage it. But the anxiety that was showing up nearly took me out of, not of life, but really it took me down. It made it so that I couldn't show up and do this, so that I was barely able to get through my day of working with my clients. And if even I sometimes get into those places, it's okay that you do too. Just know that there are things you can do. Your anxiety is not who you are. It's just a part of being human. And as much as there are parts of being human that suck, there are parts of being human that are pretty great. And I'm glad to have a little bit of both of those. So thanks so much for joining me today. Thank you for being here and for walking this path with me. If this episode spoke to you, I'd love it if you'd take a moment to rate, review, or share it with someone who might need it too. To keep the conversation going, come say hi on Instagram at Embrace the Dark and the Light. And if you're looking for more support on your healing journey, you can find free resources, meditations, and so much more at embracethedarkandthelight.com. Until next time, may you honor the dark, trust the light, and keep coming home to yourself.